It is April 30th, the end of the first full month of the baseball season. And it's time again for another edition of Wednesday with Walton and Reis. I'm Brian Walton, and this is Kyle Reis. Welcome, Kyle.
Hello, Brian. How are you?
Good, good, good. And you found us here, so you already know where to find us, but I'll tell you anyway. And that is at thecardinalnation.com in video form and in audio form at the Scoops Sports Network and all your favorite podcast apps. So let's get into it. There's been a lot of movement, a lot of changes. And let's start at the top. Thomas Saggese, who was hitting 341, wasn't getting to play much since the return of Mason Wynn from the injured list. Fortunately, it looks like Wynn's back is not going to be a serious ongoing problem, hopefully for him. And the Cardinals made the point that, hey, Saggese isn't going to play much, so let's bring up the hottest hitter at Memphis, Jose Barrero. And folks may remember my opinion was I thought Barrero should have made the team anyway out of camp because in addition to being able to play shortstop, he's a very good center fielder. And the Cardinals had redundancy in the center field position. And I get, in a way, in hindsight, why Michael Ciani was on the roster at the beginning of the year, because Victor Scott was unproven, and they wanted to make sure if Victor, went in the tank, that they had Ciani there available. But as it turned out, Victor's holding his own, and Ciani's in Memphis, and now Barrero's on the roster. What do you feel about those moves?
I think they're no-brainers. We thought last week with Thomas Saggese sticking around and Ciani getting sent down, we knew that there was always a chance that if they couldn't find the at-bats for Thomas Saggese, that they would send him down. It's just that I personally didn't think that they would add Barrero to the 40-man. I thought for sure they'd bring Jose Fermin up or Cesar Prieto, something like that, one of the guys that are already on the 40-man. So I will give a little golf clap to the St. Louis Cardinals for making what is absolutely the right choice for them. And not only because of how Jose Barrero's defensive acumen translates in center and short and in other spots on the infield, but because he's a right-handed bat. And I think that that's important for the Cardinals too, especially because, Luken Baker has been less than impressive recently after that first week or two as a right-handed bat off the bench. This gives him a little bit of competition. Maybe a little competition will help drive his success. So I think from a total roster construction, talking specifically about the position players, this might be the best 13 that they can actually have based on their current depth. And I'm kind of excited about that to see how it goes. Now, I do want to say Thomas Saggese is incredible. This morning, when I say this morning, I mean mere minutes ago at 6 or 7:15 on a Central Time on a Tuesday night, I just watched Thomas Saggese go down and get a changeup. I think it was an 0-2 or a 1-2 changeup out of the zone against a tough lefty and not blew because it was like 90 off his bat, but put it right into center field for a single. That's stuff that he was not doing last year. And that's stuff that a lot of other hitters at the major league level haven't been able to do, especially with changeups and righties on low and outside pitches. So the last thing
it's like the Cardinals kryptonite, even, back to O'Neill but anyway.
It is. And it doesn't matter who the hitting coach is. And it's like you can tell that they're adjusting, but they're not really adjusting. So that's all to say as a setup that I'm anxious to see what Thomas Saggese's role is at Memphis. And if maybe we see him start to get some outfield time, Brian, do you think that's something we might see?
I don't know if it's something we might see. It's something we should see.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's going to be a utility player. I mean, second base is stacked up 3-4 deep, and that doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. We know he can play shortstop, but he's not really a left side guy. Yeah. So where else can he help out? He can help out in the corner outfield positions, but he hasn't played there. And the place to do that is Memphis, not St. Louis. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to watch and see what happens there. The other thing about putting Barrero on the roster and calling him up, because of his past with Cincinnati, he's a former prize, everybody probably knows, a big prospect with Cincinnati, and he was on their 40-man for a long time, to the point where I don't think he has any minor league options remaining. So if they get to the point where Barrero isn't hitting or they need to send him down, he's going to have to go through waivers, and he's the kind of guy that could easily get claimed. So, you'd hope that Barrero will be here for the long haul, because otherwise they might lose him.
Yeah, I'm really hopeful for that. I hope that the work that he's done with Russ Steinhorn and Brock Hammett and all of the guys at AAA have helped put him in a good position to have success at the major league level. He's made such good progress in such a short period of time. He just needs to get that momentum going. I guess the best thing about the Cardinals playing a doubleheader on Wednesday is that he will almost certainly get a chance to play instead of just being an option off the bench. With that in mind, I'm also anxious to see what the minor league brass can do with Michael Ciani. This is really their first chance to work with him in 2 years since he entered the organization. Taking away the end of the 2023 season, that doesn't really count, but this new minor league brass, to see what they can do with him and maybe turn him into, I've always been skeptical of him as a 26-man roster piece, even with his defense and his base running and his fundamentals. Maybe they can turn him into something that is what we all hope he can be, which is a dynamite fourth outfielder.
Yep. Now, another part of that transaction, because the 40-man roster was full, Zach Thompson's already on the 60-day IL. There's not anybody else, at least we know of, that's going to be out for a longer period of time. By the way, somebody asked a question. I'm going to digress for a minute, interrupt myself.
Yes.
You'll love this, interrupt myself, right? Tink Hance is on the 60-day injured list. Tink Hance is on the 40-man roster. However, Tink Hance is on the 60-day injured list in the minor leagues. So he doesn't count against the major league roster, even though he's on the 40-man. So that's kind of weird, but that's the way that it works. But anyway, somebody had to come off the 40-man to make room for Barrero. There was a lot of discussion, would it be Michael Hellman? Would it be Fermin? Would it be Munoz? Would it be Ryan Loutos? And Ryan Loutos is where the wheels stopped. I know without even asking you, you weren't surprised by that. Tell everybody why. And the Cardinals are obviously down on Loutos. He got a brief chance last year. He did okay in the handful of chance he had. But this year, he didn't get the call up at all. Still getting decent leverage situations with Memphis, but it seemed like he had dropped way down the pecking order. We'd seen a lot of other guys, O'Brien and Munoz and others get called up, and Loutos didn't. What do you think changed for him in terms of his stock dropping?
I think for me, when you look at his stuff, it just doesn't measure right. Aside from velocity, it's not a repertoire or a two-pitch mix that's major league capable. And when you're trying to make these very calculated decisions about 40-man space, you have to take into account each individual person in that. And this isn't somebody who's going to go to another organization and magically unlock something. It's just, that's not going to happen. So he's probably as unlocked as he's going to be. That doesn't mean somewhere down the line, say that the Chicago White Sox claim him, or he finds his way in the White Sox organization and something doesn't click and all of a sudden his slider is a real pitch other than just like a pretend pitch. That could definitely happen. But it's the smart move to make. He's older. His velocity is kind of meaningless because his fastball is not particularly good. Doesn't really have a third pitch he commands well, or that's interesting. So when you're looking at the other options you have, Roddery Munoz, Chris Roycroft, who has gone down to Memphis and fixed himself, it appears. You look at these, and he's probably close at this point. Roycroft is probably close to making a return to the majors, I would think. I think we're right there past the 15 days or right at the 15 days. So we'll see Roycroft. But there's just other options in relief. He's probably the easiest one that you'll be able to clear through waivers at this point in the season, even if he doesn't. And I think that plays a lot into it.
And Loutos, the point Kyle's mentioning, Loutos probably won't get claimed by another organization. He'll probably remain in the Cardinals organization and pitch out of Memphis like a Packy Naughton and others before him. But, from the perspective of the 40-man roster, Kyle's just hit the entire list of relievers except Fernandez. Munoz, Fernandez, Roycroft. That's it. Those are the guys, in Memphis right now to be called up. As we saw, Graceffo got called up more in a long situation, but there's not a lot of options right now if they need bullpen depth.
Yeah, that's it. It's a weird, sometimes the 40-man roster gets constructed a little weird sometimes. I don't think it's particularly that. I think they're being smart with the relief options. And, last week we talked, it seems like relievers are either elite or recyclable. And sometimes you recycle them and they become elite. And that might be Ryan Loutos' eventual role, but just keep cycling them out. If they're not top end, just keep cycling them out.
And, as we've talked about, I already mentioned Tink Hance, but Sam Robertson, went on the IL as well. And into the rotation, at least his first turn, was Curtis Taylor. And Curtis Taylor is a guy that you've talked about. Folks don't know him. What do you know about Curtis Taylor, and why do you think he got a shot to start for Memphis?
I think he got a shot to start for Memphis because he was partially already stretched out. He's a little older, and his stuff
29, 29.
exactly 29. Still substantially younger than me. Not to keep making this show about age, Brian. But
Or to make it out of bullpen pitching ability, because Kyle, I don't think either you or I would be able to do squat either coming out of the bullpen or starting for that matter.
Brian, let me tell you a quick little story. I've been doing a lot of wheelbarrowing at work, and my entire body feels like it has exploded into 3 billion pieces. So the idea that I could even pick up a baseball, make the throwing motion, I mean, I'm here, and that's all I got, Brian. It's not going to rotate anymore.
I'm clearing brush for my property, and that is terrible grunt work, and I got scratches on my arms, and it's terrible. But anyway, the people don't care about that. So where does Curtis Taylor throw, and do you think he's a guy that has a chance?
I do think he has a chance. It's kind of an interesting bullpen piece. Now, one of the things I just said about Ryan Loutos a second ago is that he doesn't miss bats. And we saw Curtis Taylor. My favorite thing as I'm preaching about, hey, this guy could be kind of interesting, is he didn't strike out anybody in his introduction to the rotation, the Memphis rotation. So he didn't really miss a whole lot of bats either. He really, his slider is his bread and butter. It's kind of interesting. He throws a slider, a sinker, a changeup, a four seam, and a cutter. And really, he could probably get away with just throwing his slider, his sinker, and his cutter, and he would probably maximize his arsenal. But pitchers pitch and they throw what they throw, and you deal with it. But really, the crux of his arsenal is a lot like, again, Curtis Taylor throws a slider, Michael McGreevy throws a sweeper. But it's a little like McGreevy stuff. He has to be selective about how he pitches to lefties, what he uses against lefties. But he has pretty decent velocity. His average fastball, his average sinker the other night was 93.4 miles an hour. His four seamer was that exact same. So I just think that if you end up needing a long relief guy, or again, if you're looking to recycle a pitcher, he's probably as good of an option as you have at Memphis if you need innings and you want to reserve somebody.
So you mentioned McGreevy. McGreevy looks like maybe he's turned a corner. His last outing, exceptional.
Yeah, it was a good week. Brian, you reintroduced the audience into the dual start week for minor leaguers that we talked about, being really anxious to see what that meant for Michael McGreevy in his first turn of having 2 starts in a week, and all the returns were really, really solid. His start on Tuesday was better than his start on Sunday, but not by much. He went deep, and really he allowed his sinker and his sweeper to catalyze his effectiveness. And that sweeper in particular, that pitch, again, I'm not as metrics driven as a lot of other analysts. Blake was amazing with that. Our good friend Kareem. There's people out there who understand that stuff. They get it on a level that I'm not intelligent enough to get it. But when I watch that sweeper and I zone in on it, that is a major league pitch. It's major league capable. And when he's dancing the sinker off of the sweeper, without getting into the rest of his arsenal, without getting into the handedness of the hitter, and he's commanding it, he's in good shape. He's had a couple of rough starts, not rough, but pedestrian starts at AAA, and a lot of that is just because there's a lot of falling off, and then he might miss his location with a fastball or a sinker, and then that pitch gets driven, and he gets the ball off the ground. And he didn't really do that this past week. His fastball, between his sinker and his fastball, his command was really good. He was where he was successful at the major league level last year on the black of the plate there. He was on it. And that was great to see. It seemed like he started to click, Brian, a little bit this last week.
So let's move down to Springfield. That club got off to a good start this season. Their rotation, pretty static. Obviously, Jerpy's out, but Roby, Rajic, Hansen, Motts, Henderson. But they're 2-8 in their last 10. And the offense hasn't helped. Weatherholt missed a bunch of time with some kind of a stomach ailment. The offense isn't super dynamic, but the pitching hasn't been good enough to hold it up. What are you seeing from Springfield in the third or fourth week that you didn't see in the beginning?
I don't know if I'm seeing a lot. I think Jeremy Rivas, it was nice to see him. He's been kind of inconsistent from week to week. But to see him have a Sunday where he hit 2 home runs and was driving in runs, it's good to see him rebound.
Yeah.
He, as a potential utility infielder who excels defensively, if he can continue to loft the ball, I think, and find consistency, I think that's really important for the Cardinals from a depth perspective because of the shortstop.
And
I think that
he's rangy. He's not a small guy. He's got good size. So Rivas is a guy that has been intriguing for a long time. They sent him to the fall league. Has really hasn't played anywhere but shortstop. At some point in time, you'd think they would want to move him around like they're already starting to do with Weatherholt. So
yeah,
yeah, Rivas definitely one of the guys to watch on the Springfield roster.
it's been fun to watch him play a little second when Weatherholt plays short, and they vice versa. He is, as you would suspect, as somebody as talented at short as Rivas is, to watch him play second. I think he might be. I mean, he is
Overqualified for the job.
overqualified. Like he had like 3 plays, and I was like, oh, this is actually some of the best defensive second base I've ever seen in the minors. Like he's got it. Some guys got it. He's got it defensively.
It's going to be interesting to see. And we're getting obviously way ahead of ourselves, but Memphis has Fermin and Prieto and Saggese, there, and now you got Weatherholt and Rivas, and then you've got this backup of guys at St. Louis. It's going to be interesting to see. Will Donovan get a long-term contract, or will he become the next Edman? Is Gorman going to play out? Obviously, win is set, but there's a lot of potential percolating on the infield in the minor leagues, much more so than the outfield right now, I think.
Well, so that's what I would say. That's one of the other things I feel like I've noticed in Springfield that I hadn't quite put together, Brian, is there really isn't a whole lot of outfield depth. And you can really feel it at Springfield. Maybe, I mean, of course, Peoria is still the same thing that we talked about last week. It's still so weird there. Some of the outfielders came alive, but at Springfield, you can definitely feel the hole in the organization, even as Nathan Church finds his way back to Springfield and has had some minor success since coming off of his minor league rehab stint before going back to Double A. So yeah, the outfield in the organization is weird.
Yeah. So some news at Peoria. Joseph King, the reliever, literally just dominated in his rehab in Palm Beach. His whip 0.19. I mean, amazing. Just like allowed one hit, a solo home run, I think, in 5 some innings. Didn't walk anybody, struck out 8. He's back with Peoria. But the move that corresponded to King being activated was Zach Showalter being put on the development list. That was a surprise to me. We've talked a little bit about Showalter's use has been inconsistent this year, and it may be because he's having some kind of mechanical problem. The development list is not the injured list. It's not. Usually guys are put on that because they need to go work on stuff. And I don't know if Showalter's still in Peoria. My guess would be they may have sent him to Jupiter, and he might be, on the backfields in extended spring training. Have you picked up anything about what's going on there?
I've had a really busy. I wanted to do so much this past week, Brian. I wanted to write. I wanted to get ahead of things, and I did not have time. So I have not done the research that I normally otherwise would since that news broke. I guess I know it became public this morning, but since it kind of broke yesterday, I have not done the groundwork. But I will say, when I watched his most recent start, that was the one where he was grinding through the first inning. His command wasn't bad, but he was still walking people, and then he got removed in the second inning in part because of pitch count. You could definitely tell he was not repeating his mechanics. So again, total speculation on my part, but I never want to see anybody go to the IL or the development roster or list or any of it. Like I never want to see that. I want to see guys moving forward. But this felt more to me, doing a little bit of projecting on what I saw, felt more like, let's get this guy in. Let's try to work on the mechanics. See if his sinker in particular is breaking the way. We don't have the data there in Peoria, so we don't know if his sinker was breaking right. I don't think it was. I think that they were probably going to work on that. So that's my hope. They've been very forward with the IL stints for their pitchers who have been hurt, which they have not always done in the past. You might just see somebody not
disappear for a while. Yeah,
that's it. They would just absolutely disappear, gone into a bunker somewhere. But there would be no roster move. So the fact that they're doing the roster moves, they're being very open about it, I think lends itself more to it actually being a development thing than it does this might be an arm issue that they're being weird about.
trying to hide. Yeah. So we'll have to keep an eye on what happens with Jack Showalter. We had hopes that he'd be in the Peoria rotation and would be stretched out. That's obviously not happening. Anything else at Peoria that you want to cover?
No, I mean it's the same kind of stuff, kind of game to game. I do think one of the players that has kind of, and we'll see how it levels out, but John Gazdar has had, I think he was the Cardinals' 11th round pick last year, a utility infielder. He's gotten off to a really good start. The kid kind of hits everything. He takes really good at bats. Not to say that he's going to be a Dakota Harris where he's climbs a ladder, he ends the year at Double-A, but he is kind of built in that mold. I don't know if he's got the same pop that Dakota Harris has the potential of having, but if you want a guy kind of way under the radar at Peoria, that would be the guy that you might want to keep an extra eye on. And just to reiterate, it was really nice today to see Javi Baez, Joshua Baez hit his first home run of the year, and Zach Levinson hit his first home run of the year. And hopefully those two guys get going because, again, prospects that are very important to both Peoria and the Cardinals organization.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that Peoria outfield, Levinson, Cho, Baez, you think, and Petruzza's on the injured list right now, or he'd be right in the mix too. I mean, those guys have the pedigrees. They should be hitting much better than they are.
Yeah.
So maybe they start to turn the corner, like you said.
Yeah.
Palm Beach, interesting. I don't know if it's a tandem or not. Nelfi Infante's spot this last time around. Nolan Sparks, the 13th rounder last year, a guy that I think you also have had your eye on, got the opportunity to start for Palm Beach. I think it was on Friday, maybe.
I think so. It might have been Saturday, but really Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are all the same days to me, Brian. So I can't differentiate that. He's a really interesting guy. He did everything he could in his individual off seasons in college as a D3 guy to get as good as he can. And he goes to trade. He gets better. He does a lot of it on his own, but now with the new pitching brass, they're working together. And I think we're going to see this. I think this is kind of that piggyback situation that we've mentioned in the past where a lot of these guys, Yordi Herrera, who's pitching tonight and was pitching pretty well, Nelfi Infante.
Yeah, and Herrera's just left. He's just 20 years old, right?
Exactly. Yeah, he'll be 21 in December. They've got all of these arms down there. And I think aside from Mason Burns and Sam Broadenson, I think that a lot of those guys we're going to see ebb and flow in and out of the rotation. One of those guys who's now at Peoria that has had success since being promoted to Peoria is Michael Watson, an undrafted free agent, another lefty who throws from a weird angle, allows his stuff to play up. There are pitching options at the low levels that are intriguing and more than just minor league depth intriguing, potentially more. And I think Nolan Sparks is one of those guys that, again, will fly under the radar as what I think was a 13th round pick last year, might have been a 14th round in that bracket, and who will fly underneath the radar, but who does have a chance to make a major league debut, probably more than likely, even though he's starting now, as a bullpen option. And I love that. I love the options that they have at Palm Beach, Brian.
Another guy on the Palm Beach roster surprised me through 4 starts. So, it's not a tiny sample size. Brant Thompson has a 1.56 ERA, like 4th in the Florida State League. Is that sustainable?
I think it is at Palm Beach. I don't know if his stuff is good enough moving up the ladder. That's, again, you got to root for the Missouri State guys. You just have to. 17th rounder, Missouri State. Come on, bring it. Let's root for this kid. So I don't know if his stuff is sustainable. He doesn't really have anything that jumps off the paper. He's just a pitchability righty. And again, they'll work with him. They'll get the best out of him. I have no doubt about that. And I do think he, just like we saw with Gerardo Salas last year, I think he's of that ilk where he's just a good enough pitcher, although he doesn't have the velocity that Salas have, or even really the secondary offering that Gerardo Salas has. But he's just a good enough pitcher who knows how to dot the zone well enough that he should, and be advanced enough with his stuff, he should be able to pretty well dominate, low A for as long as he's at low A. But it's awesome. Again, the Cardinals have gotten incredible results early on in the 2025 year season from their day 3 picks 11 through 20. You can't ask for anything more than what they've gotten so far.
Now, there's another guy, another 20-year-old on the Palm Beach roster that's caught my eye, and he caught my eye in spring training because he's 6'3", and that's Ortiz and Peña, the outfielder, and he's been red hot. I think he hit 340, something like that last week. Drove in 7 runs in 5 games. Peña looks like a guy, and this is his first year at low A. He'd been in the complex league last year. Any impressions of Ortiz and Peña?
Yeah, if you hang it, he's going to bang it. It's just anything that's high, any breaking pitch that's high, belt high or higher, that is within like the inside half of the plate, he's going to crush the baseball. I don't know if he's even looking for it, but he picks it up really well. And we saw him do that this past week. We talked about it after the Futures game. He's really toolsy. He hasn't put it all together yet. The defense is still kind of clunky. Still runs a base. He's quick. He's tooled up there, but he still runs a base. Is kind of weird. He's an aggressive base runner, which is something I like to see out of those kids. But that is the one thing that's really stood out to me. I think he's got the physical traits, the bat speed to get to fastballs, even maybe next level fastballs. We'll see how that develops. But his ability to adjust with his mechanics when he sees a hanging breaking pitch, whether it be a curveball or slider or cutter or whatever, is really impressive. Again, we'll see how it develops, but that's been the one thing that has really stood out to me. The last week, 2 weeks of Yordaline and Danielle Ortiz have been super interesting for me, Brian.
Yeah, Danielle Ortiz being the third baseman, I think the 16th rounds last year.
Yeah,
was the only position player not to play, so he's really getting his feet wet now. This is his first month as a professional. He did play some winter ball, as I recall. But as Kyle said, Danielle Ortiz, just like Ortiz and Peña, a guy to keep an eye on the Palm Beach roster now that you can see them most nights, assuming the cameras are working on MILB TV. I don't want to complain because what we've got is a lot better than what we had.
I know. I was telling some friends, I'm like, man, if it just had velocity, and if it just had the pitcher, and if it just had, and I was like, wait, no, you can't do it. You can't do it, Kyle. You got your wish, just one step at a time.
Exactly. Well, we're almost 30 minutes in, so I think we'll call it a wrap for this week. Next week will be May, obviously, so we'll have a bunch of new things to talk about. One of the things I'll be working on the next couple of days is pouring through the detailed stats for the first month and picking my choices as player of the month and pitcher of the month. And what we do a little differently is I'll show you half a dozen, 8 guys, however the stats tend to stratify, so you can look and agree or disagree with who I pick and why as our view of the top hitter and pitcher of the month. Of course, our team reporters continue to send their reports through. We still have the prospect list, all the other things that you hear about here every week, but are an important part of what we bring you at the Cardinal Nation. Along with, of course, Wednesday with Walton and Reis. Kyle, thank you again for another informative episode, and we will talk next week.
Brian, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. See everybody next time around.